When a great civilization dies, does it go down in tragedy or does it retreat into obscurity? In 476 AD, a child named Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of Western Rome, was proclaimed emperor by a man from the north, Odoacer. There was no bloodshed in the streets, no great battles or armies crushed, just a crown returned. And in that moment, the Western Roman Empire officially ended, or at least, that's what the history books say. But the truth is strangely simple as a date on the calendar. No city was lost overnight. No founding document was snuffed out like a candle, and the so-called death of Rome may not have been a death at all. Part 1. Before the storm, Rome on the road to collapse. Rome did not collapse in a day. It had been cracking from within for decades, even centuries. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire had become a shadow of its former self. Public spending was bloated, its ranks were corrupt, and its elites were riven by personal ambition. Civil wars were so frequent that the people could no longer distinguish between external and internal enemies. On the northern frontier, Germanic tribes, Goths, Franks, Alemanni, threatened not only with their swords but also with their simple existence. They invaded, settled, and eventually became part of the very empire they had feared. The Roman Empire, once the heart of the civilized world, now stood like an aging giant surrounded by its own bastard sons. And in this context, Romulus Augustulus, a powerless teenager, was placed on the throne. Part 2. Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of Rome. Romulus is a name that carries weight in Roman history. Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome. But Augustulus, the name meaning Little Augustus, is a sign of the irony of fate. Romulus Augustulus ascended the throne as a teenager, manipulated by his father, General Orestes. He was neither loved by his subjects nor respected by the military forces. He was just a pawn in the ultimate power game of the Roman aristocracy. When Odoacer, a Germanic mercenary leader, asked for land for his soldiers and was refused, he responded not with diplomacy but with force. Orestes was killed. Romulus was deposed. But surprisingly, Odoacer did not call himself emperor. He sent the imperial crown and insignia to Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, and identified himself only as King of Italy. That act, gentle but decisive, marked the official end of Western Rome. Part 3. Was it the end? If you asked a Roman in 480, they would have known nothing about the fall of the empire. They still wore togas, went to public baths, spoke Latin, and listened to the Bible in Romanesque churches. For the fall of Rome was not an explosion. It was a process of molting, an old skin sloughing off to make way for a new one. Odoacer did not burn Rome, he ruled it. Roman law remained. The tax system, the bureaucracy, even the philosophy of government did not disappear. What did disappear was the belief in the permanence of an institution. The death of Western Rome was the death of the myth of invincibility. Part 4. Cultural hybridization, when the barbarians learned from Rome. Odoacer did not destroy Rome, he lived in it. The Goths did not burn down the library, they built their own Roman palaces. The Germanic tribes, once called barbarians by Rome, were the ones who kept the Roman memory alive, albeit a distorted, clumsy, hybrid version. The Franks in Gaul began to adopt Christianity. The Visigoths in Spain retained the Roman legal system as part of a new code. Even the Lombards who invaded Italy did not completely abolish Roman administration. They merely changed the head. In Italy, Italians were no longer Roman citizens, but a community ruled by a foreign warrior class, but still retaining Rome's heritage. Language, architecture, beliefs, and collective memory. Scroll, where did Roman culture survive? Latin remained the official language of the church, administration, and the intelligentsia. Roman law became the basis for many early laws in Europe. Architecture, such as the arena, temples, and road systems, were still used and renovated. Education through monasteries, manuscripts of classical Greek and Roman literature were still preserved. Christianity spread in a clearly Romanized form. The papacy, church rituals, episcopal titles. All this proves that the Germans did not destroy Rome, they became part of its heritage. They did not recreate Rome, but they began to redefine what Europe meant. Jigsaw the seeds of the Middle Ages. From the ashes of Rome, the first building blocks of medieval Europe were laid. The common language, vulgar Latin, began to split into French, Italian, Spanish. The early kingdoms of the Franks, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths became the foundations of the modern nation-state. The Roman Church began to surpass the Roman Empire as the dominant spiritual force in all of Europe. This was not just a succession, it was a transformation. Rome did not die, it changed shape. Like a river, the old water flowed away, but the flow continued. Part 5. The Church, a light in the dark. When Rome fell, it was thought that the light had gone out. But that light had only passed from the arena to the church, from the emperor to the pope, from the legions to the priests. In a time when the courts were constantly falling apart, only one power stood firm, the Roman Catholic Church. It was not weapons, but the Bible that held Europe together. It was not castles, but monasteries that became centers of knowledge, medicine, art, and social organization. It was the church that was the red thread connecting the imperial past to the emerging New World. Candle monasteries, fortresses of knowledge in the midst of a sea of barbarians. After 476, hundreds of monasteries sprang up across Europe. There, the Benedictine monks not only prayed but also copied books, preserved Greek and Roman texts, ancient medicine, history, the Bible. Teaching, the first place where noble children learned to read, write, and calculate. Hospital cared for the sick, helped the poor, opened a stopover for travelers. Studying astronomy, agriculture, maintained the early Roman sciences. While there was chaos outside, inside the monastery, knowledge and order were preserved like a precious seed. Church the Pope, the new emperor in the shade. An important thing to understand. After 476, no one ruled all of Europe except the Church. The Pope in Rome was the only one respected by both East and West. When the Germanic kingdoms converted, they had to accept the leadership of Rome. The Church organized the coronation, legitimizing the new government. Thus, religion became politics. The event of Charlemagne being crowned emperor by Pope Leo III in 800 is a typical example. It was the Church that created the Holy Roman Empire, a new Rome without the old Rome. Compass instead of collapsing, Rome was reborn in the form of Christianity. Rome died in the body, but was reborn in the soul of the Church. The arena became the Church. Roman law became Church law. The emperor became the pope. The state became the diocese. Religion, once an auxiliary tool of politics, now became the center of politics. Material power gave way to spiritual power. Pushpin phase chain. 476 was not the end, but the turning point. After all, what we call darkness may just be light shining from another direction. From the ashes, a new Europe is emerging, no united empire, but a united faith. Part 6, Life in the ASHES, When the Medievals Begin. History never stands still. What we call an end is often just a beginning disguised as loss. When the Western Roman Empire died, a new world began to breathe, a world called the Middle Ages. World from one empire to many kingdoms. Rome was once one, but after 476, Europe became a map of fragments. The kingdoms of the Franks, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Lombards sprang up like mushrooms after the rain, each carrying a part of the Roman legacy and a part of the barbarian identity. In Spain, the Visigoths applied Roman law to their rule. In France, Clovis, the Frankish king, became the first to be baptized into Roman Christianity, paving the way for a Catholic rite. In Italy, under the control of Odoacer, then the Ostrogoths, then the Byzantines, the Roman city-states were alive with town halls, squares, and public fountains. Europe entered a period without a center, but one brimming with the potential to form distinct regional identities. This was the birth of the modern nation in its early form, brain from citizen to parishioner. In ancient Rome, you were a citizen, with the right to vote, with obligations to the state. In post-Roman Europe, you were a parishioner, a member of a religious community, guided not only politically but also morally, spiritually, and in a way of life. The monastery replaced the school. The cathedral replaced the court. Baptism replaced the right of citizenship. Instead of living to serve the empire, people now live to look forward to eternity, a better afterlife. Worldviews changed, history changed too. Counterclockwise arrows but an inheritance and resistance to Rome. Despite its Roman heritage, the medieval world was not Rome. It was fragmented rather than unified, spirituality rather than reason, theocracy rather than law, faith rather than debate. But in its minimalist and austere shell, there was something extraordinary. The Middle Ages laid the foundation for great things to come, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, science, and human rights. That is what makes this period not just dark. Candle instead of empire, we have tradition. Empires may disappear, but tradition quietly lives on. It lives in hymns, in stone inscriptions, in the way we divide time before and after Christ, in the political maps we learn in school, and most of all, it lives in the very desire to seek light in the darkest of times. Book's conclusion of Volume 1, Death is not the end. 476 was not the day Rome died. It was the day Rome changed, from sword to cross, from gladiator to monk, from empire to memory. Rome lives on in the bells of its churches, in its ruined columns, in its laws, its language, its writing, and its dream of an ideal order. And from those ashes, the Middle Ages began.